Gotham Knights is an upcoming action role-playing video game that is being developed by WB Games Montreal and published by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment. Rumors about the game have circulated well before the game was officially announced at DC Fandom back in August. I have made a video that covered some of the pre-reveal information on the game, which I will link down below if you are interested in that type of coverage. But for this video, let's break down the new multiplayer aspects, the release rumors, and character mechanics, plus so much more. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. With that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Gotham Knights. Let's start with the trailer and pre-alpha gameplay that was shown off at DC Fandom in August of 2020. The trailer showed that the game would have multiple different characters in the form of Red Hood, Batgirl, Robin, and Nightwing, all of whom are now Gotham's protector after Batman is presumed dead, and the team is sent an emergency video Batman recorded in case he was ever killed. He also announces that he has destroyed the Batcave, but was leaving the team a new home base, and the location is Belfry, which we already got a look at in the background of the Batgirl image. It's the big tower. And the game was also announced to be multiplayer. And the first look gameplay showed there will at least be one vehicle in the game in the form of the Bat Cycle, and the playable characters can perform combos with each other. And we also saw that there will be materials that Batgirl and the playable characters can pick up, which will most likely be used for crafting and upgrades. So this event gave us a bunch of teases at things we can expect, so vehicles, multiplayer, crafting, materials, the story, and we didn't have too much longer to wait when it was given a 2021 release window. And for the most part, that kind of covers the reveal event itself. I know they also showed off the Court of Owls in the trailer, but that was one of the most teased elements and biggest rumors that circulated before the game was even announced, so most fans know about it, and I'm not going to spend too much time covering every Court of Owls aspect in the trailer, like the police badge and so on. But fans still had a lot of questions in regards to multiplayer, the story, and new mechanics the studio is adding, and a lot of this information was actually given in interviews after DC Fandom, which usually doesn't get the same attention as a big event, so I've combed through and kind of put together different things we've gotten from all these interviews. So in terms of story, luckily fans didn't have to wait too long to get answers. The creative director and senior producer spoke to IGN and gave additional details about Gotham Knights in terms of the story. The first aspect the team wanted to make clear in regard to the game itself and world is that there is no connection to previous Arkham Batman games, and that this game was always considered a non-Arkham game. The team's official response said, quote, "Yes, 100% in regards to the game not being an Arkham game. That was something we arrived at early on. We want this to be the start of something, not just the continuation or prolonging of something. It was always intended as a new franchise set within DC's Batman universe. Obviously, once we had that as not a blank slate, but a clear possible space, then we started arriving at some of these other ideas that allowed us to kind of move in a very different direction and, you know, take a step of killing Batman." And what's interesting here is that they actually mentioned this is a start of a new franchise, which potentially means there could be multiple games in this new series they are planning out if it's a big enough success. They kind of tease at this later in a future interview, so we'll get to that, but this is kind of when they start sowing the seeds that maybe we could see more games in this type of world if fans like it. IGN continued on the story thread and asked if the story is based on any existing comics, and the team said, quote, "Honestly, we could probably publish a reading list and post it to our website, and that would be an excellent way for people to get themselves more fully immersed in it. But to be clear, it is an original story. It's very much our interpretation of several aspects of the Batman lore and the Gotham City history, and we kind of synthesize them in a way that holds together as a unified storyline. Yes, this game will be an original story, but like most superhero stories, they will be taking inspiration from comics that have come before. I want to note that the team did end up releasing a reading list in September, which once again I'll touch on a little bit later when we discuss villains in the game, but I will put it up on the screen and link it down below, so if you are interested in reading some of these and kind of seeing what threads they're pulling from, that is now available. And the final question in regards to story was if more stories could be told in this new universe WB Montreal is creating. The team said yes, but they wouldn't elaborate further, and that this new universe is all about growth, which once again sounds very cool, and fans of the series expect something like this. If a game is successful, they will continue the story and continue to make more games, and potentially this could even be in the form of DLC. We just aren't sure yet, and what the scope of this game is and what post-launch looks like. Games Radar was also given a synopsis that sets the stage for the game. It said, quote, "The game itself has a unique take that depicts a Gotham 15 years into Bruce Wayne's tenure as its protector. The rogues gallery is already well established. Low-level criminals fear Batman's presence. His intervention anticipated by the underworld's rising forces and loathed by the large swaths of Gotham City's police department following the murder of Commissioner Gordon. It'll be our responsibility to restore order with a little vigilante justice, although that'll be easier said than done." Which definitely starts to build the world and give fans a better idea of what to expect in this title. And don't expect this game's story to be short either. In a follow-up interview with Respawn First, the team described the game's mystery story and gave a rough idea of how long fans can expect to play this game once it's finally released. They said, "The reason we went for a mystery sort of structure for our main story is that it isn't something that you can just grind through over a weekend. It's something where you uncover a piece of it and you get a chance to explore that piece, and it has implications, and it changes the world. And then you have to kind of go and do the detective legwork in order to get access to what the next piece is going to be. So it really is a mystery arc. And so with the core, the things start out as one thing and then they'll definitely end up somewhere else. And while there are no hours attached to this figure, they do say it won't be something you can just beat in a weekend. So I would assume this game would definitely be north of at least 15 or 20 hours. And the game's story will hopefully be complex enough where it still will have fans discussing it, and it will include some of those detective elements which everyone loves in those games. Then I want to move on to the world itself and this open world the team has been promising. The team has confirmed this game will be a completely open world city right from the start of the game, and there will be no level gating, which got IGN to question further and ask why enemies have levels then above their heads if players are able to go anywhere. And the team said, "It's true that as you are getting more powerful in your progression, you're going to see a sliding scale in terms of not just the level of enemies, but even some of the types of enemies that you're going to be coming up against. But it's not a grind. It's not a situation where you'll say, oh god, I have to go grind this type of mission in order to level up to this, and then I can get this. It's really that when you encounter open world crime activities and other activities that involve AI, you're going to see a range, right? You might see guys that are a bit weaker than you and guys that are a bit stronger than you, and how you approach each of these situations it presents you with some choices that you're going to have to make. Like, is this a situation where maybe I'm going to swap out a piece of equipment because I think I'm going to handle it better that way? Do I want to take a more stealthy approach? All of these options are available to the player, and the level of your enemy is just one factor in deciding that. So it sounds like enemies will get tougher as you level up and get further into the game, and they will get higher levels, but it will be a range. Not all enemies will always be higher than you. Some will be weaker, some will be higher, and it will also depend on enemy types and a lot of other factors the team just isn't ready to talk about. But this interview makes it sound like the difficulty will sort of scale to you, and enemies will have mechanics instead that provide a challenge rather than just an enemy that is very strong and has a lot of health. There will be mechanics involved, and you can adjust that with your own gear and playstyle. The other open world element is the idea of a day-night cycle. I know most Arkham games focus on a single night and are known for taking place over a short period. And this game sounds like it won't divert too much from that path. The team has said the game will take place over many nights, and during the daytime our players will actually be out of their disguises, which was teased in the trailer, and our characters will spend the daytime analyzing clues, talking with Alfred, crafting gear, and preparing for the next night of our investigation. which to me sounds like it could be a very interesting mechanic if done right. It all depends on how progression and pacing works in the game. I don't want it to feel like your character is being held back because you aren't able to craft or upgrade until the following daytime. Like if you're out at night, you just beat a boss, you have all these upgrades, but you can't do anything with it until you call it quits when you want to keep playing. I kind of hope that this is smoother than what I described, and I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out and they have a good idea of what to do. But also during the day, we aren't allowed, at least at this point, to explore the world. We will just be in Belfry Tower, kind of working on upgrades and doing things there. So yes, Gotham is a real city that we'll see, but during the day, we really won't have too much of an interaction with it. And the last story element about the open world I want to talk about is if the world and story will truly be as open as they describe, or if it's still going to be a linear type story like the previous games. The team said there will be certain challenges and there will be objectives that we can accomplish for NPCs at any time, and all of which kind of leads to these major set pieces in the storyline, not only for main bosses but the main arc as well, and that players can experience the game differently depending on playstyles. So it sounds like not completely linear, but also not completely open as well. It's going to be some sort of mix, and it sounds like the team is still trying to figure out what works and how these games can be played a little bit more of an open world than previously. Now let's talk about a first for the series, multiplayer. The team has said the game will only be 2-player multiplayer, so even though there are 4 characters that are playable, only 2 can be in any given world at once. But you can also have 2 of the same characters as well, so if one person is Batgirl, there can be another Batgirl as well. You won't be withholden to only picking who your friend isn't playing as. The team has said that all characters will have complementary skill sets and abilities, which makes the team-ups that much more effective, and there is a potential there as well, even if you are playing as the same character, to come up with combos and have things happen with different builds. In terms of the world, the team has said the world has been designed with either solo or 2 players in mind, and that's kind of really what they're working towards for balancing, and that combat has been redesigned with multiplayer in mind as well. So they're really building this game from the ground up with this kind of component in mind. It wasn't just thrown on at the last second. It sounds like they are taking the right steps to make sure if you do want to play solo, it works, but if you do want to play with 2 people, that's a very well crafted experience as well. And in my opinion, the multiplayer overall is one of the best features the team is including, and they're making it as easy as possible. They've announced that there will be drop in and drop out co-op, so if you have a friend that can only run a few missions, they can join you without having to go to the main menu and go through the hassle of adding someone new and then booting in together. So your friends can jump in, help you out, jump out, and so on and so forth, which is going to make it feel very, very smooth. And the most important thing about multiplayer is the team has promised the co-op is also untethered. So you and your friend can be playing in the same world but on completely different parts of the map. But you can still come together for bigger bosses or missions, which sounds awesome. There have been some co-op games in the past where you're very limited at where you can go just because of the engine and this and that, but they make it sound like, nope, you'll be completely free. We won't withhold you to stay by your person that you spawned in with. You guys can really go explore this world for yourselves and come together when necessary. And I'm excited to see how this works in practice. I will say too, it's assumed from comments the team has made that the game will not be split screen, so if you were hoping that you could play some couch co-op, this doesn't seem to be the case as of now. Okay, let's say you don't want to play multiplayer and want to enjoy this game single player. That is completely viable as well. Back to the interview with IGN, WB Montreal confirmed the game is still a single player experience at its core. And even more important for a lot of people is that this game can be played completely offline. So you can still play the game offline, solo, and not miss anything, and you're still able to fight through the world alone, just like how you would in any of the previous Batman Arkham games. You also won't be forced to play as any of the playable characters either. If you want to play as Nightwing for the entire time, the team says that is completely okay. You will always, of course, have the option to switch characters back at Belfry, but you won't be forced to. They say though, if you are someone that wants to switch between multiple characters, story progress is kept among all characters, so you won't have to start from scratch if you want to try out characters during your time with this game. If you want to jump to Red Hood, play him for a little bit, and it sounds like the open world scaling will adjust to that as well. So if it's a lower level, worse gear, the enemies will kind of adjust to that, so you won't be left behind if you want to try out some new characters. If you're a single player, it has all checkboxes people look for, offline functionality, completely single player, and you can choose one character and play them all the way through. So if that's what you're into, they're still having that at its core. Now let's move on to what we can expect from the playable characters themselves. As I said, there are 4 of them, who are Robin, Batgirl, Nightwing, and Red Hood, all of which will have unique abilities and skill trees which have not been shown off at the time of recording, but some fans have already pointed to some skills and potential abilities we have seen during that pre-alpha gameplay, and we do know that these skills and abilities are called knighthood, and each character will have their own separate knighthood in-game, which is then what you go into as you progress further. And the team has made a point to say the skills will be in depth enough for the community to create different builds, so even if 2 Red Hoods are playing together, they could have very different play styles and builds. And not only will the skills themselves vary, but the game will include equipable gear. And for Red Hood, you will be able to upgrade his ranged weapons, melee weapons, and suit itself, so expect similar customization for all characters. But you won't be able to just spam your skills over and over. Players do have a stamina bar, and this will limit actually how much you're able to utilize your special skills and abilities. This game will have a little bit more depth and a little bit more things you actually have to pay attention to moving forward, which I'm okay with. I know it might make some people not like the game as much, but it doesn't sound like the game will be completely gear and skill dependent. But you just have to pay attention a little bit more, and it will add a little bit more depth to combat if you are looking for that. The first question I want to cover about the characters is the customization possibilities. IGN asked, how do character skins work? Are they a mix of individual pieces of armor or full outfits? And WB said they're a mix of a lot of that. So just to be clear, when we talk about gear, we're talking about your melee weapon, your ranged weapon, and your suit, which has certain characteristics. And then there's your suit style. That's the sort of skinning the suit, because we just don't want to turn it into just a random crazy quilt. What we've done is we've got distinct suit looks, and then within that there's accessory variation that the player can tap into, and that way you get a chance to tweak it and make it exactly the way you like. And this sounds good to me. You can customize the character, which a lot of people are worried about, and you will be able to apply overall skins, so your mismatched armor and gear won't make your character look completely out of place, but it sounds like there still will be accessories, so not everyone will have the same exact skins. You can make small tweaks and changes, so your skin will still look good, but it won't look the same as everyone's. Each character also has a neon color that the team has been promoting as well, all the characters with, if you remember the trailer. And when asked if this is a marketing move or plays into the character functionality, the team actually said, it's funny you brought that up, because it's a very important platform for us to deliver game information. And then he points to the gameplay walkthrough as an example. Some of those visual effects tell you what damage type you have equipped on your weapons. So it's a way for the player to receive signs of feedback, and that lets them know what protection they have, what they're going to use against their enemies, both in terms of ranged and melee attacks. There will be different damage types. I guess I'm not 100% sure from this if it's just ranged or melee, or if there will be different types that we can actually attack with, and enemies will be able to block or get more hurt by certain types. So what this actually means in terms of gameplay and different damage types is yet to be seen, but look forward to that as another new combat element that doesn't seem like it was in the previous games. And then let's close out the character section of this video by discussing the official character bios that were released. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. I know they've been very covered, and most of these characters' bios don't stray too far from what we've already known about the character. But Red Hoods says, quote, Jason Todd is an intense and volatile anti-hero. It all stems from dying a violent death, and then being forcibly resurrected by one of Batman's most dangerous foes. He has trouble keeping his temper in check, but he will not hesitate to step into the line of fire when a friend is threatened. Red Hood wants crime to pay because Gotham City is built on a foundation of corruption, and he has been on the receiving end of it for far too often. Jason is trained to reach peak human strength, and he's proficient in multiple combat techniques with all manner of weapons, both traditional and high-end. After reconciling with the Batman family, he has embraced Batman's non-lethal combat methods. Robin is next, which says Tim Drake may be the youngest of the Batman family, but he's also the smartest and a master of deductive reasoning. Tim is a true believer in Batman's mission and is motivated by the conviction that Gotham City needs a hero rather than by personal loss. Batman was a mentor of the highest caliber who personified the type of man Tim hopes to become. He's an expert fighter armed with his collapsible quarterstaff and skilled in the art of stealth. Tim also possesses a background in combined psychological warfare and behavioral sciences, all of which sets the stage for him to accomplish any mission. Next is Batgirl, which says few people can match Barbara Gordon in terms of raw willpower and determination. Barbara has always been a person of action. In her mind, backing down is never an option. Having one of Gotham City's most well-known police commissioners as a father had a massive impact on her. Jim Gordon gave his life for Gotham, and now she wants to make sure it wasn't in vain. After a face-off that put Barbara in a wheelchair, she became Oracle, a powerful information and communications expert. But her father's death spurred her to train and recover from her wounds so that she could return to active duty as Batgirl. Barbara is highly trained in a variety of fighting styles such as kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and her signature weapon is the tonfa. Barbara also displays great skill when it comes to hacking or coding in computers and technological systems to dig for information. And finally is Nightwing. Dick Grayson is a natural leader, an optimist, and most charismatic of the Batman family. He grew up in an unorthodox but loving circus family, so he values close personal bonds. Dick believes that for the fight to be worth it, there must be something real to fight for. And that something has always been other people. He was Batman's first protege before becoming a hero in his own right, and Dick boasts a mastery in acrobatics and is an expert at taking down enemies with his signature dual Eskrima sticks. And the final character news is that depending on the character you're playing as, it will change some of the dialogue you have with villains based on their relationship and how well they know each other. Because all these characters, once again, have all existed outside this game, so they have different interactions with the villains, so look forward to that as well. That covers the characters, which actually transitions very well into the villains that we can get into next, and which ones we can expect in-game so far. For starters, we have seen Mr. Freeze in the Court of Owls seem to have been confirmed, and the Court of Owls seems to be the overarching villain of the entire game, while Mr. Freeze seems like either a minor or major boss in one of the areas. Also, based on the teasers before the game was revealed, one directly mentions Two-Face when the correct code was entered, along with the symbol teaser, so at this point I'd say it's safe to say we'll see Two-Face in one form or another. Fans have also speculated Poison Ivy will be in the game, based off a holiday poster that was released on the official Gotham Knights Twitter account, and the location of the circus is at Robinson Park, which is known to be Poison Ivy's hideout, which it could just be an Easter egg mentioning Poison Ivy, or it could mean something bigger that she's in the game. Once again, this one's a little bit lighter, but it's safe to assume she's always been a fan favorite in the Arkham games that she could for sure show up. And we could go on and on. Fans have referenced the reading list that was posted, and one of the comics does include Hush, so we could see him. Fans have brought up Joker, and so on and so forth. Batman has a ton of villains, so we're just really gonna have to wait and see. But we do know one thing, is that different enemies will have quest lines. It won't be as simple as just fighting a boss and then moving on. So expect more of a build-up to take on bosses and enemies, and this was hinted at in the pre-alpha gameplay when it was mentioned that we made it through Mr. Freeze's questline, and that's why we are fighting him. We'll also be able to take on multiple villain quest lines at once. Especially as we mentioned above, the world won't be level gated, so theoretically you could take on any boss enemy in the open world and go on and on. I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds, but this is an aspect. You will have to kind of fight your way up, presumably doing different activities and things till you get enough where you can actually go fight the boss and then progress the story. We aren't exactly sure if bosses will have levels tied to them or how all that works, so we're just going to have to wait and see what it looks like in the final game. The team has also said there will be 5 major boroughs in the game, or main areas, and each borough will be tied to a different crime family and probably different enemies and so on and so forth, and all of them will probably have to be cleared to get to the Court of Owls. Now what's interesting too is the team said they aren't letting the death of Batman impact the villains that could show up either. They were asked, quote, "Does not having Batman limit the kind of villains that you are able to pull into the game in any way? Obviously people tie Batman to Joker, but does that mean if there's no Batman, you can't have him or you can't have Hush show up? Can you have other major villains, or do they need to be a certain type of villain that can kind of be applied to the entire family?" And the team actually responded saying, "No, actually I don't think that gives us any limit on whatever we want, because those ones you mentioned, they're not just tied to Batman, they're tied to Gotham. That's at the heart. That's the connective piece. And so yeah, the full answer is nope, it doesn't limit it." And another team member from WB said, quote, "I think one thing that's great is when Batman is gone, because of the weird relationship he has with his villains, they're also struggling to reinvent themselves. So when you have the heroes that are going on their arc of evolution, and the villains, I mean, part of what makes the villains that we're going to be showcasing is that they're also in a position where they have to adjust their approach and their agenda and who they are as a consequence of losing their greatest nemesis." And for the most part, that sounds really interesting, so don't write off Hush or Joker or some of these villains that are normally just tied to Batman. And for the most part, that covers the bosses in the game and what we know about it now. We know there'll be a lot more, we just don't have any information at the time of recording. As for platforms, the game has been announced for the PC, PS4, Xbox One, PS5, and Xbox Series X. So basically every platform will be able to play this game. On top of that, when asked if the game would be a games as a service, which was a rumor that circulated prior to release, the team said this is very much not designed as a game as a service. There is an ability tree, which is different for each of the characters, and then there's gear that you craft, and so many choices that you're going to be making, but that does not mean that this is a game as a service. We'll just have to wait and see how monetization will translate to this game, if at all, if it's just skins or just DLC, or neither. We're just gonna, once again, have to wait and see, and they're standing firm that no, it won't be a game as a service. Continuing on that same thread, I know the game isn't even out yet, but there were already stories circulating about post-launch content in the form of DLC, and this quote comes from an interview with Game Informer. When asked if Red Hood, Batgirl, Robin, and Nightwing really were the core characters of the game, the team responded saying, quote, "We're going to have more detail later about our post-launch lineup, but those are the four," and then they clarified saying, "Yes, those are the four playable characters of our game." And the first part of this response makes it sound like there will be more characters sometime after release the team has already been planning, and that they'll have more details about it sometime after release. I'm sure there's videos and articles already discussing possible characters that could show up. I'm not going to cover any of those rumors or speculation here, but if you were hoping for additional playable characters, because none of your favorites are those four, you might not have to wait too long after release. And in terms of playable characters as well, the community has speculated that Batman isn't really dead, and it could all be a ploy for him to get into the Court of Owls, but the team is standing by that he is not playable, will not be playable, and is actually completely dead in this world, which to me sounds genuine. It all comes from an interview with GameSpot, and I really think the team is trying to separate themselves from Batman stories and is really working to build out these characters. And they really don't need Batman to do that, especially if such a big aspect of the game is going to be based on character and villain growth. It doesn't make sense to bring Batman back to ruin all of that. So I know people say, why would they tell the truth if they were going to bring him back? But I'm really thinking that no, I think he's dead. I don't think they want to bring him back, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then let's close out by discussing the release rumors on this game. The only confirmed window we've been given is that the game will release sometime in 2021. The first rumor of a potential release timeframe also came from that Flying Graysons poster where the Poison Ivy teaser came from as well, because there is a date on there from July 16th to July 21st, which has some fans thinking this could be a release timeline. But holes in this theory is that July 16th on the poster says it's a Tuesday, and July 21st says it's on a Sunday, both of which are not true in 2021. The 16th is not a Tuesday, and the 21st is not a Sunday, which already makes this theory unlikely. And with all the other more complex teasers the team has done up to this point with the different symbols and codes, it just doesn't make sense that they would give the release date away this easy. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I don't find this one too credible, but I have to mention it because everyone talks about it so much that we could see the game in July. I hope we see the game in July, it just doesn't seem like how they would give the release date. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, rumors also started to circulate that because the team hasn't been as vocal about the project in 2021, that maybe the game has been secretly delayed into 2022. But a big Arkham and Gotham YouTuber said he heard rumors that Gotham Knights was originally going to release in November of 2020 at some early point in development, which as we know has since changed. And he uses this as evidence to say he thinks the delay rumors are bogus and would still expect the game sometime in 2021. Because if they were even at one point pushing for 2020, we don't see them as pushing it another almost 2 years after that if the game's really going to take that much longer. And known gaming journalist with a good track record, who had originally reported some news about the game and knew a lot about it before it actually came out, James Sigfield, announced that the game will drop this fall at the latest, but could come earlier. And he's been a very credible source, so I definitely trust that if he's saying it could still come in the fall or earlier, I 100% believe that he's been right about a lot of the information up to this point. But once again, take it with a grain of salt. If you want to believe insider information, 2021 still sounds like the date to expect the game, and it has not been secretly delayed, but that's kind of for everyone to decide for themselves. Now, I was actually going to end this video, but actually one more tweet came out from James Sigfield after I initially filmed everything. He noticed that an associate manager for brand marketing was posted for WB Games. Job posting itself directly mentions working on marketing plans for Gotham Knights and Hogwarts Legacy, and he speculates that because of this, if they're already getting marketing plans ready, that we could see new Gotham Knights information in the next couple of months along with a release date, and he speculates further that the game will still come in 2021. So I would say still expect 2021, anticipate the fall if it's any earlier, then just be excited. WB Montreal has also released a ton of screenshots and other character images, but this video is already very long, so if you are interested in it, you should spend some time on the Gotham Knights Twitter account because I'm not going to go through every image they've released. And for the most part, that is everything we know about Gotham Knights and where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.